Today, I'm talking about managing caregiver stress and avoiding burnout. You may wonder, well, what does Amy have to say about this? Why is she talking about this? And it's because I'm a care navigator with Tembo Health. Many of you know me that way, but if you don't know Tembo, we're a telehealth provider of the Medicare Guide program. And so I meet with families monthly to talk about one of the things we talk about is caregiver stress and how they're taking care of themselves as they care for someone living with dementia. And I also have 4 support groups that I facilitate some through the Alzheimer's Association, some of them are in person for private communities. And I have done that for over probably 10 years. And so I've had a lot of people that I have supported through this journey, and I've heard from a lot of caregivers. The other thing is that I was a director of memory care for many years. And so you really get close to the families in that way too. Um, and if any of you were having family members in memory care or have worked in memory care during the pandemic, I think you know how challenging that was. And I'd say the pandemic was a very big challenge for me back when having COVID in a memory care was absolutely a big threat to their lives. That was a very stressful situation, and a time where I probably experienced some caregiver burnout because families weren't allowed at the time. The Department of Health said that, and so we were doing it all. And when COVID ended up in the memory care, it was really tough, really challenging to do everything. And I found myself going back to some of these things to make sure that I was taking care of myself so that I could keep people alive. And it was a tough time, and I went and got some counseling for it as well, because that's a big part of being a caregiver, is to maybe have somebody to talk to, a professional, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But I definitely recognize when caregiving can be really stressful for an individual, and I've seen it a lot in families as they bring someone into memory care as well, mostly as a last resort, and they're usually very exhausted. So what I want to talk about is just recognizing stress that happens throughout the journey, why it's so challenging, the emotions that you're feeling, and ways to manage caregiver stress and try to avoid that burnout, because it's deadly. Burnout is deadly, and we want to make sure that you're there to care for your loved one. Otherwise, who's going to be there to be the one that takes care of them or advocates for them? So I just want to talk a little bit about why being a caregiver or care partner is so challenging with dementia. And a big part of that is that it is a very long journey over many years. Some people may understand what it's like to care for somebody over a few months as they are doing rehab, or over the end of somebody's disease when they really can't do anything for themselves. But with dementia, whether or not it's in the early stages or in the late stages, you really are on 24/7 when you're a caregiver for them, and you're thinking about them all the time, and you're doing your best to try and make sure that they have what they need. So it's a lot going on in your mind and a lot of emotions. It's a progressive disease. So unlike the joys of being a caregiver raising a child, where you get to celebrate milestones and such, there's just a lot of change that happens as you realize that this disease is progressing and that there's no cure. So it's just sometimes can be one blow after another. It gives very little time for breaks. I know I've spoken with caregivers who have opened up the shower curtain and there's their mom standing there going, what should I be doing? And just really how stressful that can be when you can't even take a shower or use the bathroom without the person needing you. And a lot of people do not understand the demands of caregiving, and so they do not offer how to help, or they don't offer help, or they don't know how to help. I think a lot of people, when I talk about being someone who supports the caregiver, I ask questions like, hey, if somebody gets a cancer diagnosis, what do you do? And people will say, I bring them food and I take them to appointments and I I do all these things. And then I say, well, when somebody gets a dementia diagnosis, what do you do? And it's like crickets, because people don't know what to do. And a lot of it is just I don't know how to help. I don't know how to act. I don't know if I could interact with somebody with dementia. I don't know if I'd be able to take care of them. Or maybe there's some myths around it, like they're worried the person will get violent or something. And so they just don't know how to help. And then dementia is really something that people do not talk about before it comes into your life. Unless you're like me, a dementia educator, and my mom, who's a retired nurse, we talk about dementia all the time, and what would happen if this happened and what would happen if that happened. But most of the time, when you're talking to your family or your partner or spouse, you're thinking about the situations that might happen that would be like a major car accident, or you're a vegetable, you're on a ventilator, those sort of things. You think about those kind of scenarios of what you would want and what you would not want. But a lot of people don't talk about, well, what if you had dementia? What would you want and what would you not want? There is an organization called Compassion and Choices, and their information, it has a wide spectrum of information on it. I just want to warn you there that Tembo Health and myself, we're not saying that we agree or disagree with anything that they have on their website, but one of the things that they do have that I think is really helpful is a dementia tool. And what it is something to go through and answer questions when the person still can, and get a feeling of what they would and would not want. And then if they can't answer the questions anymore, you could do that and think about what they used to say, or what you know of them, or what they've experienced. But I hear time and time again that being a caregiver, one of the hardest things is having to make choices for someone else's health. And that is really tough. The best advice that you can get regarding that is that you're just going to do the best you can with the information you have in that moment. And maybe 2 days later, you get a little more information and you wish you would have done something differently, but just give yourself a little grace, because you're always just making decisions with whatever information you have. And thank you for coming to the webinar, because that means you're really into getting some education for yourself, which really helps. It's really difficult to know how long dementia will last. And here are some of the more prevalent types of dementia, like Alzheimer's, vascular, Lewy body, and frontal temporal degeneration. And, everybody is so unique. And I think you might notice that some of these things they're talking about is how long the disease will last after they're diagnosed. Well, most people with dementia are not diagnosed in the early stages. Everybody's wondering what's going on, and is this something to worry about, or are they just getting older? And what I find is that most people are diagnosed in the moderate stages, in the middle stages of dementia. And so, how long will it be after diagnosis? Well, when did they get diagnosed? And there's no magic calculator. I always advise people to try to look at time in 6 months at a time, because really a lot can change in 6 months. And once you get into those middle stages, looking 6 months ahead is probably the best you can do with trying to plan out how you want their care to look, or finances that you have, all of that. Trying to think about something that, what if they live to be 100? Their parents live to be 100 and they're 92. I might have to plan for 8 more years. It really isn't going to be a given like that. There's no magic calculator. And I think you just stress yourself out by trying to plan an 8-year journey when at some point it's just, let's just deal with the 6 months that we have right now and see if we can do the best with that. And then another reason why it's so challenging is that no one gives you a map, and everyone's so different. And that's why I'm very happy to work with the Medicare Guide program, because many families say that when they receive a diagnosis, here's your diagnosis, we'll see you in 6 months. And they don't get a lot of information about what to do and how to handle things and what are the steps they should take. I know the Alzheimer's Association has a new app right now. It's called, I think it's called My ALZ. And it could be used for really any type of dementia. So I'd recommend grabbing that and checking it out, because it is something that helps from diagnosis to the end, is what they're saying, with really trying to give you some information and also have a place where you can keep some information. The other thing is that care is really expensive, and medical bills can be high, equipment costs everything. Even like incontinence products are so expensive. And so it's just always having that burden of expense on the person who's caring for them as well. And then everything is always changing from hour to hour, day to day, month to month. One thing you can always count on for dementia is that it's going to change. And the moment you think something is figured out and you've got a good plan in place, it changes, and that's not an issue anymore. And all of a sudden you're dealing with something else. And then you really miss the person that you used to know. And grief is normal. And the thing with grief and dementia is that you probably are not going to just grieve one time at the end of this disease when the person passes away. You are going to grieve over and over and over again. And that is one of the biggest challenges of caring for someone with dementia, is that you're trying to get the day-to-day done. You're trying to help them with everything and give them the best care possible. But throughout that, every time you notice that they're struggling with something new, it's this whole grief of a new challenge has come up. A new part of the disease is happening. You know, a different part of their brain is now being affected. And you can see that progression. And every time it progresses, there's a lot of grief with that. Even if you are with somebody day to day, you notice those things when they happen, those little things where, wow, they went and got a tab of butter when I asked them for a glass of water. And just stuff like that, where you're just thinking that's a change. That's something right now. That's a hallmark. That is something to note that has changed. And so with that, just know that all of these feelings of grief are normal. And I'm not here to tell you how you feel. What I want to do is go through them a little bit, because I have found that many caregivers don't realize that other caregivers feel the same way. And it can be a relief to know that you're not the only one who feels that way. So one of the things is denial. You may think that your loved one is going to get better. You might hope that there is a cure when you're at a point in the disease that is beyond any medical treatment or any medical treatment that's coming in the future. You may also think that things aren't that bad. And today is a pretty tough day, but I probably can get through it. And you don't realize sometimes how every day you're having struggles. You're thinking, oh, today was just a bad day, but tomorrow will be better. I'm sure tomorrow will work out better. I'll change something. I'll do something new. This will get better. It'll get easier for me. And so that can be some denial that you may feel. Anger is a big part of it. It's really difficult when the person that you're caring for isn't aware of all that you're doing for them. There's a part of our brain here that helps us see things from another person's point of view. And when someone has dementia, they only see things from their point of view. It's something that we develop from a child, like as an infant, all the way into adulthood. We learn to see things from other people's point of view. We learn to be appreciative of what other people do for us. We learn to give back to other people. And when somebody's brain is losing the brain cells and those abilities are being lost, what happens is that they lose that ability to see things from anybody else's perspective than their own. So it can be really frustrating at times, and you can feel like, why don't you just give me a break today? Like, what did I ever do to you? There might also be some feelings of anger because of previous relationship situations. You may be caring for a parent who was abusive to you, or a spouse who was abusive to you, and now you're putting your life on hold and doing everything for them when you have a lot of history, and that history is really hard to just rewind and forget. So it's really normal to feel those feelings of anger. It's not normal to act on them and to abuse the person. That's something that you don't want to do. But it is okay to feel that way and feel that frustration at times where it just feels like it's not fair. This isn't the life that you planned. This isn't what you're supposed to be doing. Um, I know some people can feel like when they're doing personal cares, like I wasn't ever supposed to help my father with this type of care. Like it's really awkward, and I'm not a natural at it, and I just never wanted to see him like this. So those anger feelings are normal. Guilt is another one, and guilt is one that you just can't do anything about. And that's the truth of it. When you are feeling guilty, the best advice that the professionals give are to just say, well, that's some guilt I'm feeling. Okay. And just think of something else, because you really will just feel guilt. It's something that shows that you still have the ability to see things from another person's point of view, and that you're still thinking about what you wish you could be doing or how you wish this could be different. You may have some survivor's guilt of why did they get dementia and I didn't? And, I'm not the caregiver. They would have been really good in this role, and it should be me that had the dementia. You may feel guilt that you are not able to do enough, that you can't afford to do enough. There's a lot of guilt that comes along. And whatever guilt you're having, if you even experience some happiness, you can sometimes feel guilty because you're having a good day, or you took a day away or went on a vacation. A lot of people talk about the guilt of being away for a week and just feeling so bad that they weren't there for that person every day. And it's normal to feel that way, but it doesn't mean when you feel guilty that something's right or something's wrong. It's just an emotion that we feel, and you just got to acknowledge it and say, I'm feeling real guilty, and you got to move on. Sadness, of course, is a big part of grief. And I always say there are no rules in grief. So if you are going to cry and cry and cry and cry today, that is okay. If it's every single day after a long period of time, well, then we probably need to look and see if there's somebody in the medical profession that can help. But it is okay to experience that emotion that you're having, that this is just not fair. Seeing them like this breaks your heart. Um, Feeling like you're missing out on other things in life, or time with your friends, or what you should be doing with your children. Those sort of things might make you feel really sad, and it's okay to cry, and it's okay to go into that sadness every once in a while. And everybody looks different. Some people cry, some people scream into a pillow, some people have to be alone when they're feeling that sadness, some people need to be together with other people. And then the last one is acceptance. And acceptance does not mean that you agree with the situation. It just means that you're understanding kind of where you're at right now, and you're not feeling all these other emotions. And the thing with dementia is, though, that something new can come along and boom, all of a sudden one of those other emotions come back again. So I also want to talk a little bit about the feelings that somebody might have when their loved one's living in a memory care, because sometimes people will feel like, well, you're not a caregiver anymore because somebody else is doing the physical cares and feeding that person and helping them with meals and medications and showering. But you are still just as much a caregiver when your loved one lives in a memory care, or if you have help in your home 24 hours a day. That does not mean that you get to go just do whatever you want and have a great time and never think about them again. Because again, you have the ability to think of other people before yourself. And so you're going to have a lot of feelings when somebody moves into a memory care or assisted living. And some of those feelings, we look at it in the memory care as, oh, okay, you're welcoming you, you're coming in here, you're part of our team now. And many times that family members feel like the reason that they have moved someone into memory care is because they failed. And they failed that if I could have taken care of you at home, we wouldn't be here. If I could have taken care of you a different way, we wouldn't be here. And I failed you. And that is not it isn't correct. I mean, it's definitely not the truth. You have not failed in any way, but it can feel that way. And it's okay to experience that for a bit and acknowledge that as part of your grief. But there's also a lot of feelings that come with having someone else care for your loved one. You may have a loss of purpose, sadness, loss of control. And here's how some of those things end up looking, because what does that look like from the outside, or when other people are seeing you, what are they seeing? A big one is loss of purpose. You have cared for somebody probably for the past 5 years, even 10 years, and now they're living in a memory care or assisted living, and you can't remember what you used to do with your life. You know, what did you do to fill up the day before you took care of mom and, you know, ran errands and stopped over there and was there for her medical appointments or took her to the dentist? What did you do before all of that happened? And so when you have that loss of purpose, you're there all the time because you really can't remember what life is like not being a caregiver. And it's not healthy to be there all the time, because one of the purposes of having someone live in memory care is so that you can get pieces of your life back and be able to work on yourself and be your best. It's also about caring for them, but it is about making sure that you're going to be okay and that you're in the kind of shape that they would want you to be in. Sadness, somebody might have sadness, somebody might have relief that, oh, thank goodness I don't have to do this anymore. And with those, you know, ups and downs of being sad and being relieved, you can have depression and you can have mood swings. This is a big life change when somebody moves into a memory care, just like any other life change, like a marriage, a divorce, a new job, retirement. All these things are big life events. And so with that can come some depression, as change is really hard for anybody. Another thing can be that you have some guilt. And when you have that guilt, you may find yourself absolutely exhausted trying to make up for it. You're doing everything you can, thinking of every minute of every day, how you can make it up to your loved one that they are living in a memory care. And many times they're not thinking that way. You know, when you come to visit them, or when you're not there, they're not thinking, you know, that you should have done something else. They are usually very content. And if they're not content, it's more of a worry about, well, where are you? And where have you been? And, you know, they might want to go home because everybody wants to go home. Right? Nobody loves to live anywhere other than their home. And so they might have these feelings that they're expressing to you, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they are upset with you or feel that you should have done more. It really is just natural for them to feel that way too, and we have to acknowledge their feelings. Another big one that I see a lot of is a loss of control. When you have cared for somebody for 5 years, for 10 years, you have all of their cares down to the minute. You know, you really get into a groove of here's how this goes and here's how that goes and here's what's successful and here's what's not successful. And when you lose that control, you might find yourself trying to control anything you can. And so that might look like, you know, the food that they're eating. It may be that you think your loved one doesn't eat vegetables and we need to give them extra food because they're not going to eat the vegetables ever. But dementia changes somebody and it changes their taste buds. And that maybe the memory care is like, well, they're eating vegetables now. And you're thinking, well, that can't be right. And it can be a really big focus on just something that's really small, but it can really drive you to try and fix even the smallest thing or change the smallest thing because you feel like things are so out of your control. And it's true. It's the same thing when you're raising children and they go off to a friend's house for the night for the first time. You don't know what's all going to happen there. And it's not in your control, but you may feel this urge to try to control smaller things like what they're going to bring with them or what time they're going to be back. And just so that you feel like you don't have this just whirlwind with no control over anything. And I'll tell you, as a person who is someone who takes a lot of pride in the care that I give to people with dementia, I absolutely feel that loss of control at times too. And I have to recognize that when I was a director of memory care, because it's like you want things done a certain way because you know that that's the best way. I do the best way and everybody thinks they're doing the best way. But it really is about really giving other people the opportunity to do things their way, and to really think about what has to be done a certain way and what doesn't have to be done a certain way. And the other thing would be that where do I fit in now? And a lot of times people take their job on now as being an advocate. And yes, absolutely, you should 100% be an advocate for your loved one. If there's something that is affecting them, something that is happening over and over and over again that is negatively impacting them, then yeah, you need to be an advocate and you need to come in and talk about that and try to change those things. But sometimes someone might get the idea that that means my job is to fix every little thing that I find wrong. And again, that's a little bit of lack of purpose. When you're a caregiver, that's what you do. You spend time with your loved one, taking care of every moment, every need that they have. And when they move into a memory care, it may be difficult for you to actually just sit down and do a craft with them, or go to an activity with them, or just enjoy a conversation, or just sit and cuddle with them. These are things that they need from you now because someone else is taking care of things. So it may feel like when you get there, your job is to first really try to find things that are wrong and get those fixed. But if it's not affecting your loved one negatively, and it's not happening repeatedly, that really is just not the best headspace for you to be in when you're visiting them. So what can I do about all these feelings? Well, you have to work on accepting them. Of course, that's kind of rule number one, that these are feelings that you're going to feel, and it's okay. And you may recognize those feelings. You may not have recognized those feelings until I mentioned them today. And but just recognizing I feel those things is a good thing, because there is something called compassion fatigue. And compassion fatigue is when somebody has been witness to so much trauma or stress, or they've just been witness to so much sadness that they no longer react to it, that they have kind of shut their emotions off. And that is a big concern if somebody has compassion fatigue. So you want to acknowledge that it's a good thing to have all these feelings. It's not a good thing if you're able to just shut it all off and not feel anything. That is very concerning for you and for your loved one. Just doing some basic things like keeping up with your health is very important. I'm going to have some statistics about that in a little bit that'll be surprising. And exercising and eating right and getting good hydration. Whether you're taking care of somebody side by side all day long, it can be really difficult to get those things into your routine. And it may be that you have to do them in tandem with the person. It may be that they have to come with you to doctor's appointments because you really don't have time to go on your own, but it's really important to keep those appointments up and keep an eye on your own health. It may be that the two of you sit down and do chair aerobics, and maybe they're not doing that much, but you're getting a really good workout, and that's good for you. Same thing with eating and drinking. Every time you're helping them with something, help yourself with something, because it's so easy to lose that nutrition and that hydration, and to say, I'll just grab a granola bar, or I'll just have a cup of coffee. That's all I really need. And you're robbing yourself of your body feeling good. And that is a recipe for disaster. Self-care. A lot of people think self-care only is like getting your nails done or taking a bath. But there are so many ways that you can do self-care. And I love some of the caregivers that I have talked to who have put notes up in their bathroom that's a reminder to do self-care today, or a reminder to do deep breathing. Every time I'm in the bathroom, I'll do a little deep breathing session. They've scheduled time with friends and family. Those things really help you remember that self-care, because daily self-care is just as important as helping your loved one get a meal. It's just as important that you do self-care. And that could be just getting your hair done or doing some exercising like I talked about. You might want to listen to some music that you enjoy. You might only listen to stuff that the person you're caring for enjoys, but let's listen to something you really enjoy. And maybe you have to put on a pair of headphones to do that and sit with them, but just to be able to be in the music that makes you happy. Anytime you are doing something like this and coming to a webinar or going to a class or reading a book, you are providing education for yourself. And that is an example of self-care, because this disease is really, really hard. There's not a lot that anybody can change. And so by educating yourself, you are preparing yourself for what's going to happen and trying to learn new ways to cope and new ways to do things and understanding what's happening in their brain. And you can really understand and predict what's going to happen so that it's not so shocking, because you're going to go through all those feelings that I talked about in the beginning every time something happens, and every time there's a fall or a hospitalization or something big like that happens. If you are not shocked, you're going to get through it a lot better, because you are going to have to go through all those feelings. But if you are also feeling the shock of it and the surprise of it and not realizing that this is part of the disease, that is just going to really muddy the waters when you're trying to figure out your feelings. Attending a support group is huge. And if you have attended a support group and thought it wasn't for you, find a different support group. They're available by Zoom now, so you can attend any one in the country or in the world, and you might find the one that fits you. And it changes. The caregivers that come change frequently. I have 4 support groups, and I'll tell you, the caregivers I had 2 years ago are not all the same ones that are in my group now. Sometimes even 6 months ago, there's a big change, because a lot of people stop attending when their loved one passes away. And so it is going to change. The people in it are going to change. You might think that one support group has a lot of spouses right now, and you're caring for a parent, and so you'd rather go to one that has more parent situations. But again, that could change in a few months. So everybody there has something in common, and it's something that many people in the world do not understand how it feels. And so even if it's a spouse or a parent, or if it's their neighbor, maybe their loved one lives in a memory care across the country, whatever their situation is, they still know the feelings that you're feeling. So it's really helpful to go. You can also get just some support from others that will just say, I know exactly what you mean. I've been there, and here's what I did to get through it. So you can get ideas and resources. Get outside, get out in nature. I know I have done presentations on a method of looking at stress and stress busters. And in addition to all these stress busters I'm talking about, time in nature is something that every human needs. And so even just sitting outside for 10 minutes in the sunlight, just getting those rays each day, or just sitting outside and having a cup of coffee on the step in the morning, whatever you can do to get outside regularly, to look at the clouds, listen to the birds, just be present and be outdoors, is incredibly healthy for all humans. You may need to say some affirmations out loud. You can Google affirmations and find ones that fit you. You can print them off and hang them up around the house, but you might have to sometimes repeat them out loud to yourself to feel that way, and to give yourself that appreciation of all that you're doing, because you are doing so much, and not everyone can. Not everyone can do it. If everybody could do it, nobody would be on this webinar, right? It would be a piece of cake. But it's not. It's something that's very challenging. And so you have to give yourself some kudos at times for what you're doing, how you're doing it, the things that have gone well today, whatever type of affirmations you're using. You may just want to write a letter or card if you're a person who likes to do that. Maybe you've kind of stopped doing those sort of things. And then there are stand-up comedians right now who are at that point where they have cared for a parent, usually with dementia. And so if you go online and look up comedians that do stand-up regarding dementia and caregiving, you'll find that there are a lot now. It's something that is more talked about. We're getting rid of that stigma, and one that comedians are finding that you've got to have some levity when you're going through this journey. And they're talking about what it taught them, so it's heartwarming at times, but also you can just use a good laugh. And watching a comedy movie is good, or like a sitcom that you used to love. There's also getting together with other caregivers. This is one of the most powerful things I've ever experienced, is seeing caregivers that have come together and started supporting each other at the support groups, or perhaps meeting outside of a support group. I know some people who have a circle of caregivers at their church or their place of faith, and that meeting with them regularly, even if it's just for an hour or two, and doing it once a month, it's just a friendship that you can't find anywhere else, for somebody who really understands what you're going through, whether you're going to cry about it or laugh about it or tell stories, whatever you're going to do, this is going to be a very meaningful relationship. And it can be also very helpful if you are somebody who's caring for a spouse, because that's really tough to have a spouse, and it can feel very lonely at times when you don't have that person to have those conversations with that you used to. So having someone to talk to can be really, really helpful. And getting together with other caregivers, I really admire when I hear stories of people who have gotten their loved ones living with dementia together, and they've all gone out to eat together, or they've all had everybody over for a barbecue. That's a special thing, because most people don't have that social life once dementia starts, and having those connections, just it feels really good. I'm going to talk about mindfulness at the end of the presentation, and we're going to talk a little bit more about delegating soon and finding respite. Speaking with a counselor is really helpful. As I said, when I went through the pandemic and had experienced so much loss and so much stress, and there was so much unknown and scary at the time taking care of seniors. And I talked to a counselor because it was somebody I could actually sit and really tell my feelings to. And I didn't feel like I could do that with my friends or family. One, there's HIPAA, I'm taking care of people. I'm a professional. I can't necessarily talk about experiences that are happening with them. But two, also, sometimes I just wanted to put on a strong face for everybody else. And so talking to a counselor and being able to really say what you're angry about or what you're sad about is really powerful. And they can give you the best advice that you can get as far as what's going to work for you. Make your spiritual needs a priority. Make sure you're getting a lot of sleep. Even things like gardening or doing a digital detox, where you just shut off the phone and shut off the TV and just shut off everything electronic for a day or for an hour, can be really helpful. I know that doom scrolling on the internet can really add to your stress level. So think about things that you watch and the content that you take in, and trying to make that more positive, because it really does affect the overall care that you're able to provide. And doing creative activities. You may not have done any coloring since you were in grade school, but sitting down with a coloring book it can be really therapeutic, because it's just enjoying the creation and seeing the completion of something when you may feel like you just can't keep up with everything in life. Seeing something that's complete is helpful. Sometimes cleaning can be that way for people. All right, so the goal is to expand the team. This is how you can help avoid the stress and the burnout, because if you are doing this alone, it's not going to work out. And we have really started to live in more isolated communities. We don't know our neighbors like we used to years ago. And so getting to know your neighbors, getting to know people from your place of faith, getting to know people at City Hall, like the resources that are local to you, going to the area agency on aging. All of these are people now that can expand your team, the professionals, but also the young man next door who can probably do the mowing. These are all people that you can expand and make a bigger team, because it takes a village. Some people may have raised their children without any help from anyone else, but hopefully those are not common situations. Most people have a partner that they do it with, which is great, or they have family or friends that help them. Nobody expects a new mother or father to do this alone. Everybody jumps in and says, what can I do? And when it comes to caregiving, it's the same thing, but people don't know how to jump in. But you really should not expect to do this alone. It's not feasible. So some barriers that can happen when you're trying to get some help from friends and family would be asking. First issue could be that, have you really asked? I hear a lot of people tell me that they think their adult children are too busy or too stressed, but when you're asking for help, that is your part to do. Your job is to ask, and their job is to answer. And if they really can't do it, they're going to answer and let you know that, or their performance in what you ask them to do is going to show that. But if you don't ask, you'll never know. And I do hear from people time and time again that they feel so helpless when they know someone has dementia and there's a caregiver, and they just wish they knew what to do. They don't know what to do to help because dementia has that stigma, and they maybe have never had any experience with that. I spoke with somebody recently who said that a good family friend went through it with their mother. So now that they're taking care of their spouse, that person has stayed in their life and continues to be social with them. And it just feels so nice to have someone who gets it. So ask. Don't compare yourself to others. You might think that, my grandma took care of my grandpa all by herself in that house until he died. Well, you don't know what the situation was like then. Maybe that wasn't very good for your grandma. Maybe she put on a good face when you saw her. Perhaps he didn't get the best care that you think he did. Maybe there were a lot of issues going on. Maybe he was overly medicated because nobody knew how to handle dementia back then. Perhaps they were bedbound and never got out of bed. Well, that's a very different situation than you have now. And also, every person with dementia is so unique. And so one person might have somebody who's super easygoing, never wants to go outside, just wants to sit and watch TV. Another person might have somebody who's trying to get out the door every moment they can. And so just don't compare yourself to someone else and expect something like that. Give those people that you're asking something to do. Have a to-do list. Tell them what you want to do, how to do it, dates and times. There are great communication tools out there. There's caregiving apps. There's family scheduling apps. There's this new thing, I think it's called Starlight. I might have to write it to you all if I said the wrong thing, but I think it's called Starlight. And it's like an electronic board, a visualizer of all the things that you're doing in the household. But these sort of things can really make a huge difference in being able to have those family members participate and not have it all fall on you. Then there's barriers to getting paid help. The cost is a big one. Not everybody can afford to get paid help. And the grants that are available, you can talk with your area agency on aging. They may know about some grants. You can also look into that, or talk to the Alzheimer's Association, call them and find out if they know of grants in your area. Talk with a Care Navigator if you're in the guide program, or somebody at a social worker at your doctor's office. Those people might know of some grants. And many respite programs do a sliding scale for like day programs. So you might pay anywhere from $20 a day to $130 a day, depending on what you can afford. But just don't say no right away. There might be something out there that's free or really affordable. You may compare yourself to others. Again, you might think, oh, grandma never got any paid help in here. She did it all on her own, but we don't know what her situation was like, and your situation may be different. And you may have other family members who feel very strongly about not spending money on paid help. I think that's a reason to have a very honest conversation about why do they think that's okay when they're not there being the caregiver, and how do they want to be there more then, so that you can have time off because they're not there. You're the one who's the caregiver. You're the primary person. And I also know that there's been a change. There's been a shift in the kind of financial culture of generations. And generations before this, they did not live as long. And so a lot of times families raise their children, they put aside money. The idea was, I'm going to leave an inheritance to them, or I'm going to leave the house to them. I'm going to leave them something when I leave this earth. But now we are living a lot longer. And so having the expectation that you're not going to spend any money on care is really not reasonable. It's going to be necessary at some point, because we're living so long. Back then, the people didn't live as long, so they didn't have to have possibly 10 years of care. They maybe got sick and it was a short thing because we didn't have the medical technology we have now. But thinking about that inheritance, or if your loved one is saying, if your parent is saying, I want to leave this money to you, don't you dare spend money on a caregiver. Well, you have to think first about, you're not going to be able to spend that money if you're not around. If you are physically and emotionally and mentally gone because of caregiving, you're not going to be able to spend that money. And you're really not going to spend that money if you're no longer living. The other thing is that think about it as you are using that money for you, not for them. You're using it for you to give you a break and be able to take care of yourself. So just like a vacation that you might have spent the inheritance on after they passed away, you're giving yourself that vacation now because you really need it. And it's maybe not as glamorous as going to where you thought you would go, but it's necessary for your own well-being. A little bit of information about managing caregivers that you pay for, because it can be really stressful. And I compare this, when I was, I don't know, 11 or 12, I would take care of infants as a babysitter. I didn't really have any experience. I was just going off of what I saw growing up and the little babies in the family and the cousins and such. I've been, learning about caregiving and how to take care of a baby, I guess, for many years, but I really didn't know what I was doing. And yet families would leave me with their infant and go out for the evening. And they'd come home, and if I didn't get something done, they didn't care, right? If I didn't do the dishes because I was spending time with the baby, they were like, they didn't care. If I didn't do the dishes because I was tired and I went to bed after the baby went to bed, they didn't care. I know that the price that you are paying for a caregiver in healthcare is very different than a babysitter from 30 years ago, but it's the same thing where you are paying them to give you a break. And if you got that break, awesome. That is wonderful. You got the break, your loved one is cared for and content, way to go. If you are paying for that and you're thinking more about you are paying for what you want done to them the whole time, you're going to stress yourself out, because just like taking care of an infant, sometimes that infant doesn't want to change their clothes. And when the parents would get home from the event they were going to, they weren't mad at me for that, because they just know, well, you did your best. So try to have those expectations and know that nobody will do it like you will. And so everybody has different techniques and everybody has to learn. A lot of times, paid caregivers are put on a pedestal that they're going to be able to figure everybody out the first time they work with them. But they're human just like all of us, and they're trying to figure out what the best approach is. And sometimes people have to fail a little bit in order for that to work. If that failing interferes with the safety of your loved one, if they are hurt or they are upset or they are distressed or they're having long-term problems because of that, well, that is something you absolutely have to advocate for and address. But if this morning that person had a challenge with them and they weren't able to get them to change their clothes, how's it affecting your loved one? When you get there that afternoon, is it really affecting your loved one very, very negatively? Because if it's not, then you just have to say, okay, well, they'll get the hang of it, and just keep talking with them and working with them, because you're all on the same team. You can talk directly to those caregivers and say, I noticed that their clothes are still on the same. Was it tough this morning? And give them the same grace that you would give yourself, and give them the same advice that you would give a friend. And that advice may be, well, I find that it works best if I just hold up 2 shirts and just keep saying, which one, until they agree. If I try to explain why they need to get ready for the day or change their clothes, we just get into an argument. It never works. So give them those tips, because you know your loved one the best. I do have a presentation that I did at the University of Minnesota, and it's called Working Together with Your Memory Care Staff. As you can tell, I feel very passionate about this because I hear from the family members, I hear from the staff, and I also know what the residents were doing every day. So I just saw the big picture that not everyone involved did as the director of memory care. And so I have some really practical strategies about how to, what to expect and how your role changes and how to bring forth concerns. And that's on my Think Dementia website. For those of you that don't know, I have a podcast called Think Dementia, and I do a lot of education in Minnesota. Okay, so what can you take off your plate? Medical appointments. Do you have to go to these medical appointments? Somebody mentioned the other day that, oh, they're going to have someone take their mom to the podiatrist. I was like, that's amazing. That's great. Because yeah, you don't need to be there at the podiatrist. They're just trimming their toenails, and your niece can take a report about that and bring it home. You have to be there probably for bigger appointments like the neurologist. That's an important one for you to go to. But if it's something like the dentist, or and you know that your loved one can handle it with someone else there, then let them take them to those appointments. The other thing is, are they absolutely necessary? That's a big part of it. And do you have to continue with all the specialty appointments after a certain point of the disease? Sit down and make a list of all the things that you do or wish you could do, and start writing down what you could have someone else take off your plate. I have some examples here. Technology is a great thing to delegate to the younger generation. And so, I know when I go up to my mom's house, I got a list of all the technology things I need to fix with Alexa and this and that. And so you can do the same with your adult children, your friends, your grandchildren. How can they help with technology? Can they set up bill pay for you on your phone? Can they help with that scheduling device that you bought, or that app? Can they find that? Can somebody bring over meals, or come over and make meals, or share meals? Maybe you go over one day a week to their house with your loved one. Is there somebody who could do the handiwork or handle contracting people when you have work that needs to be done around your home? Even if you're the handy one, usually, it's still just one more thing to do that somebody else might be completely able to do. Fun. It might be that you want your loved one to get a walk-in every day. Well, there may be a neighbor who also wants to get a walk-in each day. Can they go together? And would that work out so that you can have a few minutes to yourself? And so there are a lot of ways that you can have people helping you, ways to ask for help. The last few minutes here, I just want to talk about burnout. 1 in 5 caregivers pass away before their loved one passes away. Those are the estimates, 18 to 40% of spouses and partners. And that is because they do not take care of themselves. And so that's why this is so important. That's why everybody talks about self-care and how can you make time for it, because it's just as important as caring for your loved one. And I know it can be easy to just say, I'm going to shut my mind off right now, instead of doing something with intent, like something that will benefit you. But again, hang up notes around your house, put reminders on your phone that at 2 o'clock today, I'm going to do some stretching, whatever it is. Really try to make that a priority, because if you are gone, if you are hospitalized, what is your loved one going to do? And that is the truth of it. If you are not eating well, drinking well, if you're not taking care of your own medical health, if you have uncontrolled stress, high blood pressure, all of those things can lead to you having illnesses, you having injuries, you having a hospitalization, or even death. And sometimes you just got to ask your family, what do you see? And they'll tell you, wow, I can see it in you. You do not look the same. You are in burnout right now. A lot of those same feelings are feelings that you feel with burnout, but they can really kind of take over all the time. And one of them that's different is feeling very secluded or alone. If you are feeling like you don't have any support, nobody wants to help you, or asking for help is a sign of weakness, that is a big concern. That is a feeling that you're nearing burnout if you're not in burnout. Same thing with negativity. If you just can't find anything good in any day, you can't find any joy in your loved one anymore, you just may be in burnout. And then there's the symptoms of burnout: withdrawing from people, loss of interest in things that you used to enjoy, feeling hopeless, changes in appetite or weight or your sleep, being unable to concentrate, or getting sick more often. All of these things are the physical symptoms that can happen with burnout. And so if you have burnout, the biggest thing you can do is make an appointment to see your doctor. Write down all your feelings and the symptoms that you're having. Really talk about it with them and be honest with them, because if you're not honest with them, they cannot help you. But they will have some help for you. And I think it's important for you to recognize that you're having burnout, to see if there's anything else going on with your health, and then also for them to help you with your mental health and see if maybe they could have some counseling or a social worker helping you out. And whenever you're really, really struggling, you can start with the basics. Start with your routine, eating, drinking, taking your medications. When you're having a really hard day, think about, I'm going to get the basics done today. I'm going to get the basics of taking care of my body today done. I may not get anything else. I might not get to cleaning this or laundry, or I may not have the energy to do exercises with my loved one today, but I'm in a position where I need to focus on myself, and that is good to do. Reaching out for help is really important. Schedule some weekly time away and getting some respite. That is a huge thing. Having that respite is like having food and water, and it's very important for you to have that respite. How do you find respite? You can find respite through your place of faith, neighbors, friends, family. Sometimes people are overwhelmed by respite and they think, I have to, have somebody come over for a half a day, but it might just be that you have them come over and take your loved one for a walk, and you just have 10 minutes or half an hour to yourself, and it gives you time to just sit there and soak in the rays or do one of those other things that I mentioned for self-care, and it can make a huge, huge difference. The Alzheimer's Association has a helpline, and it is 1-800-272-3900. I'm going to leave you with that and take a few minutes to answer any questions anyone has. But with that helpline, you can call them 24 hours a day and tell them how you're feeling. Tell them if you're feeling like you want to harm your loved one or harm yourself. You can talk to them about what resources you need. They are amazing and they're well trained. So you can always call them. If you are in the Medicare Guide program, you can call your guide provider 24/7. That's part of the program, and talk to them about what's going on. And maybe it's just that you need to talk for a few minutes and just let it all out before you can see the way forward clearly. I will follow up with another webinar about mindfulness, because this was a lot of information and there's a lot of misconceptions out there about mindfulness. So I think it's a whole nother webinar, and we'll do that in the coming months. I hope you can join us next month. It's always on the first Thursday of every month at 12:30 Central, 1:30 Eastern time for an hour. We also have a website where we have the recordings for all of our previous webinars. And if you need any of that information, you can contact us at care@tembo.health. That's CARE@TEMBO.health. Like, how is your health today? How are you feeling? Thank you all for joining us today and for being part of the education. This is self-care that you did, so pat yourself on the back for that. And we'll see you next month.